And so I'm wondering if you could just contemplate for a moment the state of Spiritual Life Center prior to the coaching program.
Well, probably the biggest thing for us was a lot of grieving around big changes in our ministry, the loss of our founding minister, and prior to that, the death of his wife, Faith. We had a lot of moves from facilities, and so I think that our community had a lot of wounds that had not been, not only not healed, but not even talked about or looked at. And we were looking to our new senior minister at that time as, you know, the savior of all things, and it was very unrealistic. And so I think that we were in a stuck place, I think.
When I was first invited to facilitate a board retreat and share some information about different ministry practice, something that I called the mission-centric ministry practice, what did you find appealing or exciting about the possibilities of that program as you first began to learn more about it?
I think the most exciting part for me was around the concept of ownership, as opposed to everything being focused on the minister. Because we had had a change in ministers and we were struggling with that, and knowing that as all churches evolve, ministers come and go, and we hadn't learned how to gracefully maneuver that, because we'd been with our founding ministers for such a long time. And so that the idea that we would be focused on our purpose and on our spiritual community and the spiritual cooperative, as opposed to focused on the minister, so that the success of our community didn't just hinge on who happened to be in that role. That to me was the biggest eye-opener and hopeful possibility that I saw.
So how, once you finally got into the mission-centric ministry coaching program and began to deal with what was being presenced as the issues that were in the way of evolving your church's culture, how had the program impacted the minister-board relationship? Maybe describe how it was and what was enabled because of the program.
Well, what was we kept looking to the senior minister to manage everything and run everything, because that was the old paradigm. And I suspect our previous board was a little hamstrung, probably just let the founding minister do everything. So we were kind of handicapped in that way. And because of really different personalities, our new minister at that time had a very different leadership style, much more hands-off and just supporting people, other people to take the leadership role. And so we didn't really know how to handle that. And what shifted tremendously was, I think, a deepening respect and acknowledgement of the gifts that our new senior minister brought to the board and the community, and not expecting him to be somebody that he wasn't. And then allowing leaders to emerge, where different members of both the community and the board could step into stronger leadership roles, where I think with a founding minister that was less likely to happen. So it really opened up some opportunities for emerging leaders.
Okay, and so the coaching program helped focus on improving the minister-board relationship, because, as I recall at the time, what was up for the church is whether or not the relationship was going to continue, and given the various dynamics that were afoot. And so as you felt that the coaching process was helping you communicate in more authentic and meaningful ways, there was also a need to kind of align the staff with the emerging board culture. So how has the coaching program also impacted the board staff relationship?
Well, one of the most exciting things that came out of all of it, something we had never really done before, was we started having quarterly board staff huddles or meetings. And in the past, we had operated in silos and often at cross purposes. You know, one group would be doing something, or maybe there were duplications of efforts too, because board didn't know what staff was doing, staff didn't know what board was doing, and sometimes the board would make decisions without really understanding the impact that their decisions had on staff. And so through this process, you know, it really helped us see that we needed to work together. And it's part of the spiritual cooperative. We began to see ourselves as an entire team, not as staff, not as board, not as senior minister, each in separate silos. So I've seen a working together like we never had before.
So say a little bit about your hopes with respect and what is emerging in your church with respect to moving into those aspects of evolving your church's culture.
Oh yeah, the genogram activity was probably one of the biggest tipping points for us, because as I mentioned before, we had a lot of wounds from our church's history, a lot of losses. So that was our first opportunity as a community to surface those things, to speak about them, to name them, to basically grieve that in a way we hadn't done before, so that we could move on. And so at creating the community cue card and reading that aloud for months at a time, and really, you know, acknowledging that, especially acknowledging who we've come here to be, that was hugely uplifting for our community. So that process was fabulous. The integral membership process, we are right in the middle of that right now, and it's very, very exciting because we're really ready for it. So one of the things that we did was to do a complete revision of our bylaws, to update them, and then to include the language around community members and governing members. And I can say that I actually feel like I can, with some understanding, describe the membership process now. I understand it well enough to be able to begin to share it with others. And so we are now, now that our new bylaws have been approved, we're rolling out the whole membership process. We're going to be starting a plan of educating the community around what it all is. We've written a membership policy that describes, you know, the process of walking into the labyrinth as a new member, and then coming out of the labyrinth as a governing, participating, voting member. And so I'm looking forward this year to seeing that happen. In fact, I'm staying on, although I've cycled off the board, I'm staying on the membership team to help move that forward. And this will be the first year, starting in 2021, where we're actually going to ask members to renew and reaffirm the 3 things that they're saying yes to. So that part is very exciting. We're ready for that in a way that we weren't when we started this.
Having now 2.5 years specifically gone through the intentional process, what shifts have you noticed?
Because of the Q process, the genogram, all the work that we've done, really coming into that consciousness of a spiritual cooperative, what I'm noticing is it's not that we don't get triggered as a community. There was some triggering around the membership process, some fear of, oh, will I somehow be dumped as a member? Do I not belong? It was some old stuff, you could see it. But what's different is that nobody stays there very long. So we have the emotional intelligence, the spiritual awareness to go, oh, okay, that's not about this membership process that we're rolling out. That's about me feeling not enough, or I don't belong. So people can recognize their triggers and move off of it, or have the conversation that they need to have to resolve it. So I see that as a community. I think we've we've kicked it up a notch in terms of our spiritual awareness, which was one of the things that I was excited about in the beginning, was hoping that we could get to that place.
As you imagine someone who hasn't had the experience that you have learning about the coaching program and mission-centric ministry, what would you say was the biggest challenge for you and the other leaders in terms of wrapping yourself around the whole concept of mission-centric ministry, and how did you cope with kind of growing in your awareness and understanding of it?
Well, first we had to change, as a board, we had to change our own thinking. We had to shift our paradigms. We had to do the work before we asked the community to do the work. And that was kind of a roller coaster ride. You know, we had some people who weren't necessarily on board, who were skeptical. I mean, everybody was excited and on board after you met with us at the offsite. And then the kind of the doubts started to kick in for some people. And I think that we just had to look inside and trust. So the challenge was first for the board to fully embrace and to learn. I mean, it was a huge learning curve for the board. And we would have community members asking us to explain, you know, what is this crazy thing you're doing? And we couldn't explain it right away. It's like I said, I finally feel like I can describe the membership process. And it took a while to get my head wrapped around that. So that was, I think that's probably the toughest thing, is just to understand there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of steps in the process, a lot of growing things to move through. And so the board has to get it first so that we can be the way showers to share with the community. And so sometimes the questions and the judgments, when community members were triggered, it was a little hard to do that, because then you realize that you're triggered because you're getting defensive. So dealing with yourself, you know, first and foremost.
What would you have to say to someone who is on the fence or considering, you know, looking at the coaching program? What would you have to say that might tip them over to engaging?
I would say put your skepticism aside and, you know, what do they say? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Because it's an unknown, it's a new paradigm, it's a shift. But as you move through it, the opportunity for growth, I think that your spiritual community can stay stuck if you don't do something different. I think the way that we've done church for years and years and years is not sustainable, as you've said many times. I really believe that now. I've seen that. And so with all the doubts, just step in and I would say eat the elephant one bite at a time. So,
all right.
Yeah, well,
Thank you
I'm
so
happy to help. It's been a great experience.
I really appreciate you taking the time, Carolyn, to help document some of the accomplishments and the things that we can praise about.